In this episode, we'll look at lists, drop-downs, and data validation. These are really important areas of Excel that you should master if you want to take your Excel skills to the next level. Let's start off by taking a quick look at built-in lists. Now, there are built-in lists for days of the week, which you can see if I drag this down with the fill handle. You'll see the days of the week filled out, Monday to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I've highlighted these with conditional formatting just to show you that if you also wanted just the weekdays, you could select fill weekdays and it would do Monday to Friday. So the days of the week, those are two built-in lists, one with 3-letter days and the other with full spelled out days. The same goes with months of the year. You can use the fill handle and Excel automatically fills in January through to December. Now you don't have to fill in downwards, you can also fill in to the right, you can fill upwards, you can fill to the left. But those are built-in lists and you can't edit or delete a built-in list. However, you can add your own lists and that's what we're going to have a look at now. So why would we want to use a custom list? Let's check this out. We've got a list of 16 items and let's say that you often want to label these A, B, C, D, etc. all the way down. Now you could just type them out as I've done, but as a faster way, if you've defined the alphabet as a custom list, you simply enter the A and you can fill down using the fill handle like this. And automatically, just like magic, Excel puts in A through to P against each of these items. So that's one interesting use case for a custom list. Here's another use case for a custom list. You've got departments, and let's say you often do an analysis where you've got a fixed set of departments for your company and you want to say allocate costs and headcount to that list, and instead of typing them out manually you often go and copy and paste the departments from somewhere else. Well, if you had to find a custom list of your departments, all you need to do here is select the word departments, click on the fill handle and drag down. Watch what happens. Excel automatically fills in the departments for you, and you can choose to fill without formatting. And check this out. So the automotive products, the healthcare products, industrial products, all in the right order, the same order as you always need to fill them in, and that's another handy use of custom lists. Now a third use case which I can show you, which I think is quite a nice one, is where you want to sort by order of importance. I've got this table here, another quick to-do list with 10 items. If I apply a filter here with CTRL SHIFT L, so you'll see these drop downs. Let's say that I know there's 10 items, but I want to check which of these items are important and which ones are labeled high importance. So I'd possibly go down there, try to sort A to Z. Problem is with A to Z sorting, I've got high first, which is good, but then I've got low, which is not right. I want high, then medium, then low. Well, with a custom list, all I need to do is do a sort, a custom sort, and sort the importance based on a custom list, and this custom list will be high, medium, low. And I press OK, and OK again. And look at that, Excel sorted it high, medium, and low. So that's a very handy use case. And let's return this back to normal, take off the filters. Now you've seen how useful it can be to define your own custom lists. Let me show you how it's done. How do you create your own custom lists in Excel? In Excel 2010, you would go to the File menu, then you would select Options, and from Options click on Advanced. Scroll down till you find General, and then look for custom lists, and you can click on the button that says edit custom lists. You can type a new list directly by clicking on new list, then typing in, let's say, high, return medium, return low. Click add, and you'll see Excel now has high, medium, low as a custom list. The second way to do this would be to use the import from cells. So I click on this button and let's include departments, and this list of departments, I'll click on the range selection button again, click import, and now you'll see Excel has a new list which starts with the word departments and contains all the departments in the order which we'd like to fill them in or to sort them by. After that you click OK and OK again, and now you have your lists. Now we'll have a quick look at drop-downs for data entry. I'm going to jump in at the deep end here and not explain all the basics of data validation. There's quite a lot to explain there, so if you don't know the basics, I'd advise you to do a quick Google search or internet search. Instead, I'm going to show you some real-life cases to make this more interesting and challenging. Here we have a data entry table, and we're going to put in a name. Let's start saying Walt Disney. And here, when I get to this country column, I want to be able to select from a drop down. If I click this drop down, you'll see there's a list of countries presented to me. Let's choose United States. And city, when I get to there, again there's a drop down for me, and it limits me to these cities. Let's choose Chicago. When it gets to the email column, it asks me to enter an email address. So examples of valid email addresses. Let's enter a valid email address. walt@disney.com, and then a date of birth. Please enter the date of birth, and note the person must be at least 15 years old. No problem, Disney. December 5th, 1901. So that's an example of data validation using drop downs. You see, if I selected a different country, that the cities would be you'd have a different selection of cities to choose from. So let's get stuck in and explain how I did all that. In the sample spreadsheet on the worksheet that's called data entry, I've explained the data validation rules that I've used, and we'll have a quick look at country first. So this is the simplest. What I've done with the country data validation drop down is allow a list, and that list is a named range. So if we head over to this country column and I select that here, I need to go to the data tab on the ribbon, click on data validation, and you'll see on settings I've allowed not any value or a whole number or decimal, but a list. And the list source is the named range called countries. Now if I click on that, it will show me where this named range is, and it's defined on a different worksheet, and that worksheet's called data validation. So I've got a list of countries with the heading countries at the top. If I escape, so you'll see that that drop down feeds off the list of 16 countries it was, I think. And let's go reselect United States. With the city column, we have a slightly more complex idea going on here, because the city column depends on the selection made in the country column. So if I selected United States, I'd only want to see US cities. If I selected United Kingdom, I'd only want to see United Kingdom cities. And what I've done here is allow a list, but say use the formula equals indirect B2, which is the country. So we'll have a look over here. That city list works off an indirect function, looking up B2 or B3 in this case, and if it says United States here, it's going to look up the named range United States. Just one problem with named ranges that are based on names with 2 words in them or more. What happens is Excel can't name a range United space states. It's got to name a range United underscore states. So there's got to be this underscore character there. It's not possible to use spaces in named ranges. So the formula actually becomes an indirect with a substitute, replacing all the spaces with underscores. And we can see that over here if I select the column of cities and then go back up to the data tab, click on data validation. You'll see I've allowed a list, and the source is indirect substitute B2, space for an underscore. Now at this point you might be asking yourself the question, or you should be asking yourself the question, how do you define all the named ranges for each of the countries? Earlier I said there were probably 16, actually there's 14 countries, so for each of these 14 countries I would need a named range. Well, I'll show you two ways. One way is very slow, and the other way is much faster. The slow way would be to select the first range, which is countries. Select all of that. Go over to the Formulas ribbon tab and click on the Name Manager. I will create a new name. It should be called Countries, which is good, and it should refer to the range A2 to A15. Click Enter and OK. Then you see that's defined countries. I'll do the same now for Australia. So I will define the name, which is Australia, and it should refer to the range C2 to C22. Press Enter and click OK. So now I've got two named ranges, Australia and countries. You can keep on going, keep on doing that through all of these other countries and all of these different names for the named ranges. But as you imagine, if I change that, if I had to add a couple of countries and or add a couple of cities, or maybe remove some, then I'd have to go through that process and check I've got all the named ranges defined correctly. Now let me show you the fast way. What I need to do is set this up correctly so I've got helper columns. You'll see column B and column D and column F basically are blanks. They look empty, and columns C, E and G, etc. they contain the data that I want to convert into a named range. So what I'll do is first go into cell A1, select the current region using CTRL SHIFT 8, and then bring up the Go To box with CTRL G. I'll click on the special. What I'm going to do here is select constants. So watch what happens when I click OK. It has selected just what I want, and I can then go ahead and define the named range all in one go. I'll show you how to do that too, but let me just first show you why it didn't select B1 or D1 or E1, F1. B1 actually has a formula that returns a blank, so I've said in B1 equals double quote, and that returns nothing. And the same in D, equals double quote. So although the column looks empty, there's actually a formula in there, and Excel doesn't see that as a constant. So instead of selecting the whole range and then selecting that whole thing as constants, if I go to the special thing again, click special, click on constants, it will select just what's in column A up to United States, what's in column C up to Wollongong, and what's in column E down to Winnipeg. And so I can, as I said before, I can go straight ahead, press CTRL SHIFT F3. It's CTRL SHIFT F3 to create names from selection. And it asks me to create names from values in, and I'm going to say the top row. Click OK. Now watch what happens if I bring up the name manager with CTRL F3. You'll see if I filter it to name scope to the workbook. There we are. We've got Australia defined with these correct values. We've got Canada defined with the correct values, and the list of countries which is defined with Australia, Canada, Croatia, France, Germany, etc. And we did all that in one go without having to separately enter names for each of the named ranges and define the names, the actual range values. Now that technique does work very fast, but you've got to watch out how you set up your data, because I initially tried it without those helper columns, and I'll show you why those helper columns are necessary. If I select in this worksheet, which doesn't have the helper columns, if I select the current region with CTRL SHIFT 8, and then I go through CTRL G to bring up the Go To box, click on Special, and click on Constants, and click OK, you'll see that the named ranges will be defined along these different ranges. You'll see the outline is visible with these little white borders. But if you go down here and look, it stopped at these three cities, at Poitiers, Munich and Noida, and it thinks in Excel, it thinks that Puto, Osnabrück and Pune are actually names of countries, as it were, so it will actually define these three as named ranges. And we don't want that, so that's why the helper columns were necessary. But as you saw, with the helper columns in place, if you were to add a few cities here or add a whole country, all you need to do is go through the same steps, select the range and go to Special, click on Constants, select those and redefine the named ranges with CTRL SHIFT F3, and so that's a much faster process that also reduces the chance of errors. Okay, now we're going to have a look at how we do the data validation for this email column and for the date of birth column. With the email column, if I click on this cell D4, it shows this pop-up. It says, please enter an email address. And examples of valid email addresses are name@domain.com and name@domain.co.uk, for example. So how do I do that? Let's just first validate that this works. If I say type something that's not an email address, ZXC, and press enter, you'll see that Excel says very clearly, you did not enter a valid email address. Please make sure you enter an email address in the following format. So it does do some validation. Let's check out over here, what formula did I use? So in the data validation formula, I actually said equals search, open bracket, double quote, dot, D2, comma, open bracket, search, open bracket, double quote, at, double quote, comma, D2, comma, 1, close, plus 2. What on earth does that do? Well, basically it searches for an at sign, and if it finds the at sign, we go forward to the next search, which looks for a dot, and it looks for the dot at least 2 spaces after the at sign. So what that formula does is, if it finds an at sign, it's going to look for a dot. If it finds an at sign and a dot, which is at least 2 spaces after the at sign, then it's okay. But if it doesn't find an at sign, or if it doesn't find a dot, then it's going to error out. So if we go back up here, and if I were to select all the cells with data validation in them, go to the data menu and click on the data validation button, you'll see that the settings are to allow a custom, and the formula for the custom is the formula I've just explained, where we're looking for an at symbol, and if we find an at symbol, we look for a dot at least 2 spaces after the at symbol. The input message that you see that pops up here, that comes on this tab. So show input message when cell is selected, then it will show this, the input message that you put in here. And also the error alert, if you check this box that says show error alert after invalid data is entered, you can change the style. I've used the stop, enter title and the error message, and you'll see that it does the data validation correctly. On to date of birth. Let's have a look. How does the date of birth one work? If I click on this cell E4, it says please enter date of birth. Please note this person must be at least 15 years old. The earliest date you can enter is January 1st, 1900. So let's check over here. How did we do that with data validation? Well, we've got a start date of January 1st, 1900. We've got an end date which says date of the year of today. So today's date, but just the year that comes from today's date, less 15. So that's the bit that says you've got to be at least 15 years old from today. And then today's month and today's day. So that's the latest date that we can enter. Let's look at it in here. If I select this again, go to the Data tab, go to Data Validation, and check the settings. What I've done is to allow a date, and that date is between the start date of January 1st, 1900 and the end date, which is 15 years before today. And again, I've done an input message which says please enter the date of birth, and an error alert over here, where if you enter something invalid, it will show you this stop sign and ask you to redo the entry. Okay, one last quick word of warning. Excel data validation can be easily overwritten if you copy and paste cells. So look at this. If I go to the email column and I just quickly paste in these values, I've just pasted in this isn't an email address and it didn't produce a warning message. So what would you do if that happens? Well, I would advise you to use the feature that says circle invalid data, which you can find in data on the data validation drop down. Circle invalid data, and it just creates this red circle around, or red oval, sorry, and red oval around any invalid data. So that's a useful way to just double check your data validation, just because it is so easy to copy and paste over a field which has got data validation in it. Well, that was a quick whistle-stop tour through different types of data validation. We've had the drop-down list where you could select a country and then select a city. And then we had an email validation and a date of birth validation. Check this out more fully and play with it. Then use the sample workbook which is available and just play around with the different settings. Alright, hope you enjoyed this and learnt quite a lot from here, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye.